We've started something new here at Men at the Movies. With each episode that drops, we've made available a one-page PDF study guide. This includes key insights and themes from the movie, discussion questions to go deeper into those themes. We even have some practical steps on how to take those themes and apply them to our lives, and even some scripture verses that apply to the conversation. The link is available in the show notes for every episode, or you can get it delivered straight to your mailbox, your email box, by signing up for our newsletter at menatthemovies.com/subscribe. For this episode, we asked the question, what if laughter really is 10 times stronger than morphine? And the most applause you'll ever get happens right there in your own living room. Stand-up comedian Bob Smiley joins us to unpack Mr. Saturday Night as he shares his story about embracing his gift and the struggle to remain connected to Christ, not the crowd. Join us as we discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story. The story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and I am super excited about our next guest, introduced by supporter, board member, and overall good dude, Matt Gleaves. And so I'm super happy to introduce Bob Smiley. Hey, Bob, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm good. I am actually off the road, not doing shows until Friday. So the hardest part of my day was getting my AirPods in. And so it's kind of done. Like, it's kind of nice.
You've already peaked.
Yep. I can go back to bed after this.
So in case people are like, what kind of shows do you do? Because they're like, I don't know, Bob Smiley. What shows do you do? So tell us a little bit about Bob Smiley.
First of all, how dare you say something like that? You don't know who Bob Smiley is. I've been around for a long time. Yeah, how dare you? No, I do comedy. I do stand-up comedy. I do all clean comedy. I'm a Christian, so I do mostly churches. Love performing in churches. Do clubs. Like I'm doing. This is a good mix. This next weekend, I'm doing a comedy club. And then going to Missouri and doing a fundraiser for a organization, that is a Christian-based organization. And I do shows in little small theaters and kind of all over. It's clean, so you can bring your family. That's what I do, and it's been working for the last 27 years. So 3 more years, I think it's going to turn into something. I'm getting excited.
You think this is what you want to do when you grow up?
I think, yes. I think, first of all, I don't want to grow up, but if I ever do, it'll be nice to have, something.
That's what I told, I'm getting some physical therapy for an elbow. And just over the last year, I've had all these sort of physical ailments pop up. And I was like, I feel 30 on the inside, but my body is telling me I'm 80.
Yeah.
So internally, I just don't want to grow up, but my body's making me.
I saw a meme that said, I'm 52, but inside I feel like 27, but then outside I feel like I fought in the Civil War. And I was like, there you go. That sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, so Matt actually sent me one of your videos of like one of your clips, and you were talking about going to a club or something, and they came to you and they're like, hey man, we love your set, just hey, could you drop some F-bombs and stuff? And you're just like, you got the wrong dude.
Yeah, I've done 3 dry bar comedy specials, and there's all these other comics that have done these dry bar specials, and so this comic called another comic and was like, hey, I have this show in Houston, I can't make it, can you cover for me? And he said, I can't, but I know a guy who lives in the Houston area. It was kind of funny because I was out in West Texas in a deer stand, and I got this text like, hey, in 3 days, can you be, at this place? And I was headed home after that. And so I was like, yeah, I can actually do it. So I didn't know anything about the event. It was they call it active seniors. And it was like a little village south of Houston. and it was all these retired, seniors, and they pulled up on their golf carts and they came in, and and I was a replacement comic, so nobody really knew anything about me. And so I was kind of nervous, but they all walked in and they each had a bottle of wine. They each had their own bottle of wine, and they walked in. They had their walker parking, where they put their walkers, and walked in, opened up their bottle of wine, and so they introduced me. They were like, and a lot of them didn't even know that there was a replacement until right when the guy introduced. And so I walked out on stage and I was like, hey, I know I'm a replacement, and I don't really know what event this is, but I'm guessing not AA. And they just died laughing, and so I had them, from the beginning. But the day of the show, the guy who was putting it on, who didn't know me, called me and said that. He was like, hey, we want to keep it somewhat clean, so maybe only like 3 or 4 F-bombs. And I told him that. I was like, you got the wrong guy. I only do clean comedy. And he was so disappointed. And he was like, well, I mean, you can talk about sex and stuff like that. And I was like, no, I don't. Like, you're going to get a clean show from me. So maybe I'm the wrong guy. And he was like, well, as you're driving down, if you think of some good stuff, and then maybe just throw in 2 F-bombs. And I was like, no, I don't throw in F-bombs in my personal life. I'm not going to throw in on the stage. And then what I found out, because the show was killer, like the crowd was just the best crowd. What I found out was that guy likes dirty material, and he wanted a little dirty material just for himself, not because for the crowd. But he had a blast, and he even came up afterwards and was like, I didn't think I would enjoy a clean set, but I was laughing the whole way through. So yeah, it was kind of a nice little small victory.
Nice. Well, I mean, it sounds like the crowd was pretty well lubricated for you. So
they were, yeah. They didn't come in on hospital beds, but they all left on hospital beds.
So as you and I were emailing and going back and forth, the question I always ask the guests are, well, what's one of your favorite movies? What movie would you like to talk about? And it really came as no surprise you picked Mr. Saturday Night. Back came out in 92. Billy Crystal, kind of peak Billy Crystal powers back then.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so, it's his story as a stand-up. It's like the movie version of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And so, Bob, what was it about that movie when I said, hey, what pick your movie? And you're just like, Mr. Saturday Night, no question.
So I actually didn't see it until 96. I didn't even know about it. So I got my degree in elementary ed, was going to be a teacher, and then a principal and a superintendent. That was my life's plan. Was not ever pursuing comedy. Was told all through my life that I should be a comedian. People assumed in college that I was trying to be a comedian. Never once. I love comedy. My dad is super funny, so my dad and I always use humor. But I never thought, and this movie covers this. There are people who are funny in the living room, and there's people that are funny on stage. I thought I was funny in the living room and in the school hallways and, all that. I admired anybody that could get on stage and do it, because basically it's such a different style of comedy, because, you can be funny in the living room just throwing out stuff, but to walk out on stage and have people sit down and be like, okay, make me laugh for an hour, circus monkey. That's a completely different style. And so my junior year, they had a stand-up competition. And I entered it because first prize was $500, and this was in Abilene, Texas. So that's like 8 months rent out there today. And so I was like, I'm gonna do this because I just wanted the cash prize. I won, not even because I was that good. Everybody else was just so terrible, and I won that stand-up competition. 2 years later, this guy that I went to school with was out in Nashville. He started road managing this singer who was about to leave for tour, this Christian singer named Clay Cross. And they had talked about how they wanted a comedian to tour with them and to kind of keep the crowd entertained in between the acts. They couldn't, pay for a comedian to come out for the tour, but they could hire a merch guy. And so this road manager was like, I saw this dude do a stand-up competition in college, and he was really good, and he was clean and everything. So let me call him and see if he wants to come out. We'll hire him as the merch guy, but kind of understood that we're really bringing him out. So this dude tracked me down. This will actually tell your listeners how old I am, but my pager went off.
Wow.
I made that kind of money back then. And
so you did drugs? That's weird.
Well, I actually was doing photography because I wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted to see what it was like to make money first. And since teachers don't,
right.
I did photography. I did photography for a full year to kind of build up a nest egg and, kind of get debt free and all that. And I literally was driving in Dallas. I was driving to this corporate event to shoot this company, and my pager went off, pulled over at a Cracker Barrel payphone, and this guy was like, "Hey, do you want to go on tour with this singer?" And I was so flippant because I didn't realize it was about to change my life. And I was like, "Well, how long's the tour?" And he's like, 6 weeks, but he just won New Artist of the Year, so it'll probably extend to maybe 8 weeks. And I was like, okay, because I literally thought I would go out, they would fire me in a week, and then I would come home. And so the reason why this movie resonated with me was because I did not ever think that I could do comedy. I was very comfortable being funny in the living room, so I was more like the brother. I was more like Stan. And then all of a sudden, I flew to Nashville, got off a plane, got on a tour bus, and went out as a comedian. And I didn't know what I was doing. So the scene where Buddy, right when he changed his name to Buddy Young Jr., as a kid, walks out on the talent show and tells the first couple of jokes, bombs, and then he gets heckled and he grabs the mic and he starts like just slamming the guy who's heckling him. Like when he grabbed, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but when he grabbed that mic and pulled the mic out of the stand, all of a sudden he became a comedian and he realized he could do it.
No, look, we don't belong here. We're funny at home. You're frightened. I can't believe this, Stan. Every night in bed, this is all we talk about. I'm sorry. Just go home. Okay, fine. Go home. It's okay. I'll do it. What do you mean you'll do it? I'm gonna do the act. What's our act? It's for two. Who's gonna do my parts? I'll do both parts. Maybe, buddy. You're gonna be out there by yourself? Yeah. Well, then wear the bigger jacket. Why? It's funnier. Yeah. Okay. You guys ready? Yeah. Oh, wait. There's a slight change. It's not the Young brothers. It's just Buddy Young. Junior. It's better.
Hey-ya! Let's hear it for Alberto and Lupe, the fabulous Tuckman! Hey, I haven't seen dancing like that since they hung my brother. All right,
don't leave.
We're
the same blood type.
Now, let's give up First Avenue Amateur Night. Welcome to a fabulous kid. Very funny, we hope. Here he is, Mr. Buddy Young Jr.
We take you now to the final scene at the end of movie King Kong, where the great ape is lying at the base of the Empire State Building, and we turn to Carl Denham, Mr. Denham. Was it the machine guns that killed him? Machine guns? Fe! Siz gavey na shikse! You get it? He was dying.
So are you.
He's just a kid.
He stinks. You don't belong up there.
Who said that?
I did.
Sir, would you mind standing up, please? Please. Yeah. Thank you. Whoa! Oh, look at you. You're New Jersey in pants. I'd like to show you something that you probably haven't seen in a very long time. Your feet. No, I'm kidding. I kid the bloated. No, but seriously though, there are some things that you should really learn how to say. Like, I'm full. Oh, thank you. No, please give a round of applause for our special guest, the Hindenburg.
So I know you asked a simple question. I'm giving you a whole plot, but I was living in Nashville. I was single. I was on this Clay Cross tour. When we would come back to Nashville, I didn't have anything to do, but I was also, broke. So I would rent movies from the library because it's free. And so I was looking through movies and I saw Mr. Saturday Night and I read that it was about comedy. And because I wasn't pursuing comedy. It wasn't like a dream of mine. And I put that in my little VCR. Man, these are all old references. Anyway, I faxed my mom and told her I loved her. And so old references. I finished churning my own butter, and then I started watching the movie.
Got on the dial-up.
I got on my dial-up.
With AOL.
I didn't even have dial-up back then, actually. But yeah, and so I started watching this movie, and it so resonated with me of like, I felt like I could do stand-up. I was kind of figuring it out, but I didn't know. I just had this love of making people laugh. And so when I watched, especially the first half of the movie of the early stuff of him, like figuring out like, oh, I can do this. Man, I was like, oh, this movie resonated, immediately with me. So that was way too long of an answer, but
no,
that's
perfect.
That's what brought me into loving this movie. And it's a cautionary tale of how not to get caught up. The two things that this movie brought to me was, one, you can do it if you really put in the work. I feel like God actually made me to do comedy, and I feel like I didn't realize it. I didn't actually hear that calling, even though random people would come up to me all the time in college and be like, hey, when you do stand up, you should do a bit about Hotel Stoke being small. And I'm like, what do you mean when I do stand up? Like people just assumed I would like, so I missed all those little hints that I feel like God was putting in my life. And so I feel like God kind of was like, okay, he opened the door and kind of kicked me through it. Like,
right.
Okay, you're not going to pursue this. Well, I'm going to have somebody page you and you're going to pull over to Cracker Barrel payphone and we're going to get you into the, place that I actually created you to be. So when I was watching that, I was like, oh, so it made me realize, oh, you can do it if you really put in hard work. The other was a cautionary tale because I was just starting out, but it was going really well. And so I did the Clay Cross tour. The Newsboys saw me, which is a huge
wow.
At the time, that tour that the Newsboys and I did was with a band called Third Day. So it was the #1 tour in Christian music. So now I'm standing in front of like 4,000 or 5,000 people a night. And so things were going really well. So the other thing the movie did was a cautionary tale of don't let the love of your crowd replace the love of your family. And so I watched it in awe of well, I resonate with this character of, man, I was funny growing up. I loved making people laugh. And then all of a sudden there is a career where I can do that. I can live that out. But then also, you don't want that to be your whole identity. Buddy Young Jr., that was his identity. Like even whenever he's talking to, I'm blanking on the big management guy that kind of brushed him off. But
oh yeah,
there's a scene where he's trying to walk out because they had made a lunch date to talk about everything. Buddy can't walk out until he gets a big laugh. Like he keeps like throwing out one-liners, like, and it's not hitting, but he just like he feels like he's on stage all the time. And that was a good cautionary tale of, don't be that guy. Like, your family is the most important. Your ministry. What are you doing with your local church? What are you doing, for the community? You can't let your ministry be just on the stage. You can't let your love for people just be on the stage. You gotta make your personal life more important than your persona on the stage. And that really resonated. It was just a cautionary tale. Not that I was going to blow up or get my own TV show or anything, but just thinking like, okay, if I do this for a long time, I need to make sure that I do like remind myself, frequently, it's a job. It's just a job. It's a cool job. Like he said on the gazebo, whenever he first met his wife, he was like, it's a strange job and it's fun, but it's just it's what I do. It's just my job. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, that hits for all of us, even if, you're not on a stage, but that idea, like, who we are is so much more important than what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, especially for men, that's such a key struggle, because so often, you see, like, I know a guy who was a fire chief and retired. Within like 2 months, he had died because he had completely lost his sense of identity and self. Like, he'd go into a restaurant, they're like, hey, chief. And now he's like, who am I if I'm not that?
Yeah. And we're guilty of perpetuating it because, when I met a new guy at church this last Sunday, and my first question was, what do you do? And that's not the most important thing,
Yeah.
And it's, have you seen my dry bar specials? That should have been the question. That I don't know what I was thinking, but it is it is very cool to do a job you love. I am so blessed to do that. I also write books for middle school kids. I love kids coming to my shows and telling me like how much they love my books and how much they laughed at it and stuff. All that is great, but it's just my job. I can't let that be my identity. My identity is I'm a good husband, I'm a good father, and hopefully I'm a good Christ follower. And then it's kind of cool that I have this, unique job.
Yeah.
You got to keep a balance.
I love how it did take God kind of hitting you over the head with a 2x4. It's like, dude, I've sent all these people to tell you what's it going to take. And then, but even then to provide this movie, like you said, as sort of a check before it even got to a point. It's almost like he's like, I know this guy might go off the rails, so let me provide the guardrails before he even thinks about it.
He really did, because, like I said, I was going to do photography for a year and then start teaching. And I think that would have been an amazing career. But teachers, my whole family's in education and all that. And honestly, teachers, I think, do some of the greatest work in our country. So nothing against me not ending up being a teacher, but that's not what God created me to do. And so I think God, kind of threw me a little rubber. But even weird stuff like, so once I started and realized, oh, I can do this, I started looking back on all these like moments. So I was, me and a guy named Patrick Toombs, we were out fishing at night at the lake, Fort Phantom. Outside of Abilene. And it was like 2 a.m, and we were fishing for catfish, and we're just sitting out there, and it's peaceful and everything. And he was headed to be a singer. He had an amazing voice, and people in the opera were already kind of courting him because he could do opera. It wasn't his style, but he could definitely sing. And so we're just sitting out there and just kind of breaking the silence. He was like, "Man, Smiley, people people don't really know what we're going after. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, people want to get their, jobs and, have a pension, have a, all that kind of stuff. But we're chasing something different. And it's really kind of hard to get people to catch that vision. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, like, I'm going to be an opera singer. You're going to be a comedian. And I remember looking over at him on the dock and I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. And he goes, no, you're going to be a comedian. But, and I was like, don't speak over me. Like, so, but even like that moment, or like I said, that guy coming up to me the first week of college and saying, hey, when you do your stand up, you should do a bit about hotel soap being small. I was like, but I'd only been there a week, but I was already kind of labeled the funny guy, on campus. And so, yeah, I look back on some of that stuff of God really putting people in my life to be like giving me direction. I, of course, was too dumb to pick up on it, but, thankfully, eventually I got it.
And that should be a relief for everyone who's listening, that you don't have to pick up on all the signals that when God's moving, he's going to move, and you don't even need to be that aware of it. He'll move regardless.
Yeah. And I have kids come up to me after the show all the time and be like, hey, I want to be a comedian. How do I do it? And I'm like, well, do a stand-up competition your junior year in college and then wait for somebody to page you. So go to a pawn shop and get a pager. And like, I have the worst advice, but what I'm saying to them is like, if God wants you to do it, then, and I mean, obviously if you want to, like, once I realized I could do it, like I actually could do comedy on a stage, my whole goal was to bring people laughter that they didn't feel bad about listening to. And again, this movie resonates. Buddy Young Jr. gets so mean whenever he's bombing. He goes after the lady with the, too much makeup, or, there's in one of the kind of early parts of the scene, he's playing an old folks home. And his brother Stan is like, hey, don't be mean. And he's like, hey, what am I going to say? Moses called, and, I won't say it because it gets a little blue, but, and he's like, I'm not going to do that. And as soon as he walks out and he starts to bomb, he looks at the lady. He's like, hey, Moses called. And he can't help it. And it was just, there were so many little cautionary tales of like, man, why are you in it? Like, what is your purpose behind doing comedy? And mine is to give people the ability to have release, for an hour plus of whatever troubles they may be having in life, bring a little joy, a little laughter, but also bring a little encouragement that, God has good times for us. God has, blessings for us. God can get you through very difficult things. And so if I can give them a little message of hope as well. So, I really try to stay focused on why did God give me the ability to get on stage? And so try to make that, kind of one of my main purposes as well. And not the fame and the applause and all that other stuff.
How did God enter your life? How did that relationship begin? We might get to the movie, maybe not.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I realize this is way too much about me and not Buddy Young. But I have great parents. I have amazing, just God-loving parents. They all through my life showed me how to serve, how to love on other people. One of my favorites. So I grew up in a town with 281 people. It was very small. And it stayed 281 because it seemed like every time somebody got pregnant, somebody left town. So it stayed at 281 pretty much the whole time I was there. Very small. My dad was the superintendent of that small school. So this is a good glimpse of how I was raised, with the example of loving other people the way, Christ loved all of us. My dad, we were driving into church, which was about a 30-minute drive into a big town. And there was a guy broken down on the side of the road. My dad always stopped, always helped someone, picked him up. We drove into the big town. We got a spark plug and drove him back, fixed it. The guy was so amazed that anybody, even back then, would stop and take that much time out of the day to help somebody else. He wanted to thank him, but, he didn't, there were no cell phones. There were no, and so he literally wrote a letter. This guy wrote a letter to the mayor of Era, Texas. That's all that was on the letter, and mailed it just to Era, Texas, hoping that it would get to the mayor. And the whole letter was, "Hey, I just want to let you know that your town has a great, guy in it, Dale Smiley." And so it went to the post office, which was Emma Jean ran it out of her mobile home, and it got to her, and Emma Jean was like, "We don't have a mayor. Like, who's the guy most in power?" Well, I guess that'd be Dale Smiley. So my dad got a letter about him to him. But my parents are just great people. They love the Lord. They also did a great job raising me, not forcing but they wanted me to have my own relationship with Jesus. So we were required to go to church. We were required, we prayed at every meal and stuff, but they didn't really force it. They didn't, every day they weren't like, "Are you reading your Bible? Are you, they let me kind of discover my own relationship with Jesus. But because I respected my parents so much, I thought, hey, if this is the path they're on, I want to definitely look into this and be it. So it's kind of a boring testimony. My friend Tim Hawkins has a great bit. He's like, you ever listen to somebody up there talking and they've got the best testimony and you're sitting back there going, "Man, I wish I was addicted to meth." Like I feel like that sometimes because
I wish
really
I had almost died.
Yeah. But I mean, it's my kind of testimony of I grew up with amazing parents that just loved the Lord, and I started reading the Bible very, very young, and it all made sense to me. My prayer life was pretty great. I really felt the presence of the Lord. Growing up way out in the country, I spent most of my time walking. We had this creek that backed up to our. So I spent so much time with God growing up, and just seeing His creation and seeing just how perfectly designed everything you just really couldn't deny the presence of a creator. And so, I became a Christian pretty early on.
Yeah, that's not typically the story that we hear. Normally it's, I became a Christian early on, then I fell away, did some stuff, went sideways, and then he rescued me, right?
Yeah. I became a Christian early on. I went out to build a testimony. Yeah. I
got jealous of this guy's testimony, so I started meth.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell this really quick. But so for those that don't know, I was married 17 years. We had 3 kids. She met somebody else that was very wealthy. I actually, she left. So I was a single dad for a while. And when she left, I was like, "What does he have that I don't have?" And she told me. And at first I thought it was a gun, but do you know what a 401k is?
Yeah. Yes.
He has a huge one of those. So anyway, so I was a single dad for a while, and this one week that I was like, I'd gotten sick. I'd gotten the flu, actually, same as I have now. And there's a Med nasal rinse thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a little salt solution, and you put it in your nose, you squeeze it up. So I did that. Kids were at school. Did that. It cleared up my nose a little bit, but your sinus passages store a lot of that water and stuff. And so got on my motorcycle, went to the post office to mail some merch and stuff out. And because I go all the time, I know how to do the machines. And I walked in, single dad, kind of dark, place in my life. Walk in, and there's this gorgeous girl, and she's trying to figure out how to do the self stamp thing. And I just look at her and I go, "Hey, I can help you with that." And she's like, "Oh, thank you." And I start like cracking jokes, and she starts laughing. And I'm like, all of a sudden, for the first time in a long time, I felt better about my life. And she was laughing and everything. And it printed out the stamps. And I leaned down to get the stamps for her. And when I leaned down, the water in the sinuses just poured out of my nose. And I leaned back up, and she's just like horrified. And I laid the stamps down, and I said, I guess this is over. And I just put my motorcycle helmet on and just went outside. It was like the worst. It was like the worst moment.
So again, not to get a little sidetracked, but that's a pretty rough moment.
Mm-hmm.
when, like you just said, your wife left because this dude had a huge 401k, and how did that hit your faith? How did you handle that going
That's a
through
great
that?
question, because you mentioned earlier, you like, normally you don't hear the story of, I started out Christian and then you fall away. I never fell away because I believe that God gives us free will, and sometimes people choose selfish things, and it affects your life. And so even if you're trying to live a godly life and stuff, people, they're going to make decisions around you that are going to affect you. And so I never went through a crisis of God's not real or anything. What I did go through is, like, I know you're real, but why aren't you here? Like, I felt like, not that God turned his back on us or anything, but I felt like, like all of a sudden God's protection wasn't on my family. And I know anytime you stand on stage and if you're going to tell people about Jesus, you're going to have a bigger target on your back. And so, I knew all that. I just never expected it, to happen like that. I mean, we were vacationing with this family. We were really close with this family. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of thing. And so it didn't really affect my faith in God or, his power or his creation or any of that. But I did wrestle with, like, I feel like you're not here, which is, now that I'm good and I have an amazing wife, like, God brought this awesome Jesus loving person in my life, and not too bad on the eyes. And so
not the lady from the post office.
It wasn't the lady from the post office.
That ship sailed.
That ship, yeah. That got rained out, so to speak. But yeah, but I look back on it and just be like, it was kind of selfish to be like, I really did have a charmed life pretty much all my life. Great parents, ended up in a career I never thought I'd be in. Like, I had a charmed life. So for me to be like, oh, where are you now? Like, that's pretty, pathetic, like, selfish. Because we are going to have hardships. The Bible talks about that. We're going to have hardships, and how we get through it, and God will, carry you through it, but he won't necessarily, sometimes you're going to get swallowed by a whale. Sometimes, things are going to happen that, like, you don't want them to happen, but then you kind of look back and be like, oh, I see God's hand was on that. So yeah, I never really did have that, curse God and walk away and any of that kind of stuff. But I did have a lot of weak moments of sitting in my living room. I'd get the kids on the school bus and off, and I'd come back to this quiet house and just be like, and there were times where I was shouting, where are you? Where are you? I felt like he wasn't there, but he was, he was taking me through it. And, I learned a lot of good things about myself, and, learned who my real friends were, and, learned a lot. Like, I feel like I'm a very more focused and stronger person because of going through that. And my wife's hot now. So just saying, bonus.
Was there a moment that you thought that sort of you felt like the shift from where are you to feeling his presence?
Yeah, there were some really cool moments that was kind of undeniable. So my dad has a friend that has a ski cabin out in Cloudcroft, New Mexico, and my boys and I had never been snow skiing. My boys had never been, and this guy heard what I was going through, and so he called my dad and was like, "Hey, if he wants to take the boys and take them to the cabin and just chill out, for a week or something." And so my dad told me, we were flipping out. Like, I was like, boys, we're going snow skiing. And they were all excited and everything. And that was about 2 months before we were actually going. And so we were getting, more and more excited. And then my dad called the guy and he was like, okay, what about, do you, is there lift ticket coupons or anything? And my dad's friend was like, oh, it hadn't snowed there in like 4 years. Like, there's no snow. And so my dad called me and he was like, I don't know how to tell you this, but Cloudcroft hadn't had snow in the longest time, so you're not going to have snow. So I had to go upstairs. I'd already put the kids to bed, and so I went up stairs, and I told the kids one by one, start with my oldest, Coulter, then Trent. Then I went into Xander's room, and I was like, Xander, buddy, I got some bad news. We're still going. It's going to be fun, but there's no snow, so we're probably not going to snow ski. And I'll never forget the faith of a child. He looks at it and he goes, "It's okay. I'll pray for it." And I was like, oh, this kid has more faith than I do. And he did. He prayed fervently for snow. And we flew out to El Paso, got our rental car. The week before we flew out, they got like 4 foot of snow. Like they got so much snow that we couldn't actually make it to the cabin. and people were shutting. But the ski lifts were running like crazy because all of a sudden they got snow. And because I have so many Hilton points, I found a Hampton Inn at the base of the mountain and just cashed in points for a week. And they had an indoor pool that was heated. So me and the boys would go and we would ski all day, come back to the hotel, get in this heated pool. And literally, like when I told Xander, I was like, dude, they just got pummeled with snow. And he was like, yeah. Like he didn't act like it was a big deal.
I've been praying about it, so of course.
I've been talking to our creator about it. And so there was like that moment was like, oh, that's right. Like, and not that God's going to do that all the time. I definitely know that he doesn't, do that all the time. But at that moment, that's exactly what we needed. Like we needed that blessing, and he did provide it for us. And there's lots of things, because I don't want people to listen and be like, why haven't I gotten a blessing like that? Like, I think he only gives those blessings when we absolutely 100% need it to get us through what we're going through. And so, yeah, that was a crazy kind of reset of like, okay, he's got us. He's, and it was a great reset. There's a Baptist encampment that I performed at for like 9 years in a row at a summer called Piney Woods in East Texas. And the people that run Piney Woods are the most just godly people I've ever met. And they heard I was going, what I was going through. And my kids grew up going there during the summers because I was always performing for the youth camps there. And so they called me and they were like, hey, just heard what you're going through. Grab your kids, come here, for a week and just hang out at our camp. Nobody's here this week. Just come hang out. You know where the key to the pool and the pool slide is. And we just went and just healed, for a little bit. So there was a lot of stuff like that kind of got us through.
That's awesome. And yeah, I remember seeing something how, like basically they were making fun of people for thanking God for what could be termed as little things, right? Mm-hmm. Just like, oh, how nice, God gave you that, but where is he with the earthquakes or the fires or the wars? Yeah. It's like, oh, nice that you got snow, but why doesn't he show up in these bigger events? Which you also mentioned earlier, being when you're up on stage, living a life of faith, walking with God, it does put a target on your back. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Job's come up a lot in conversation lately. So what brought Job to, Satan went to heaven, and it wasn't even like Satan looked at Job. God looked at Job and was like, hey, look at my boy. Yeah. He's listening to me. He's walking with me. And Satan's like, oh, well, of course you're protecting him.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, let's prove it. When you were talking about feeling God's presence, and we think about, there's all the fourth man in the fire song, and there's the Daniel shutting the mouth, God shutting the mouths of the lions. Mm-hmm. And it's real easy to think of he's the fourth man in the fire. Yeah, but we got thrown in the fire in the first place. Right?
I just heard that song for the first time this Sunday. That's crazy that you reference that. But yeah, so here's the thing. One, this isn't our final resting place. Yeah. So, and everybody has free will. A lot of people are like, why did God let the fires happen? A lot in the past, at least with fires, It's because somebody threw a cigarette out in California and caught the whole place on fire. Like bad things are going to happen, and we need to keep a mindset of this is not our final resting place. That if we wouldn't have gotten snow, we would have gone out there and just had a blast, drove around, found things to get into. But God knew that we kind of needed that blessing right then, and I think He does that. But He's not going to. I don't think He's going to protect us from everything. Otherwise, is that really free will to love Him? If He's constantly, so the Job story does resonate. Sure, yeah. If Job has a phenomenal life and he loves and praises God, well, of course he's going to. But when things get hard, are we still going to love the Creator? Are we still going to be like, and just keeping in the mindset of this isn't our final resting place? Like it is an imperfect world. Satan does roam like a lion, and there's going to be attacks. There's going to be bad things that are going to happen. Not to play the victim, but 2 weeks ago I had this really bad hangnail right here on the edge, and that was annoying for about a day till I could find the fingernail clippers. We're going to have struggles, like deep rooted. That's so terrible. We're gonna. Sorry, I was like in my mind. I was like, "Oh, you're being too serious." But it is. I mean, that's what it is. This imperfect world. There's going to be bad stuff that happen. But this isn't it. There's a second verse.
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
really goes back to the movie of Mr. Saturday Night. No, I don't know how much we're supposed to be talking about the movie, but
it's all right. It's yeah. I was just like, oh, I'm trying to even think of what clips. I think I'm going to go back and put in, like when you were talking about his first stand up and actually sort of fade you out and fade that in to bring that up. I thought that would sound kind of cool. But the others,
like if you're going to do this, like one of the things at the beginning where they're showing he's got his show. And he goes in, and his daughter's all excited and all this, and he's like, "Let me see that double take." And she does this double take, and he goes, "Needs work," and you just see it crushes her, And again, it's a cautionary tale of your family is more important than your career or what's going on. Like that was a great scene. And then, of course, do you ruin? Like, do you do spoiler alerts?
Dude, so it's a what, 33-year-old movie?
Yeah. I actually was impressed that you knew it, because I've even talked to a lot of my comedy friends that had never heard of it or seen that movie. Now, they did a Broadway play of it recently, and so it's kind of gotten some resurgence. But then at the end of the movie, when he and Susan, his daughter, are kind of making up, and he realizes he's been a bad dad. She hadn't lived a great life. She, definitely had some trauma growing up and let it kind of, make decisions for her and all that. But at the end, he's like, "Let me see that double take." And she does it. And he's like, "Perfect." And you realize, like, he realized the most important job is to love on your family, love on your kids, so it does kind of have that nice little ending.
And you see that. Yeah, that was you. That's a great point. You see that little girl's heart, like she just brightens out. She did an amazing job of revealing that. And I think even the line that I really liked is, "We're all kids in wrinkled bodies," which I guess still goes back to my premise is I'm 30 on the inside and 80 on the outside.
Yeah.
One of the things this movie did so well was, even when they're old, whether it's the daughter or whether it's the brothers, you still see the kids, but you also still see that pain that was inflicted, like how he would make fun of how Buddy would make fun of his daughter on stage, and you would see how that would hurt her heart.
Oh yeah.
So you understand why she's gone in that direction later in the movie.
Yeah, and another thing that I don't know how I got this early on, but to be a comedian, you have to have thick skin, because if you have the guts to stand on stage and be like, "I'm going to make you guys laugh," you're going to get heckled. You're going to, and this was before YouTube. Now I'll put a clip online on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, and there's always trolls out there just saying the meanest stuff. I mean, I eventually had to block my dad, and they'll just tear you down. So you do have to kind of have this like thick skin and all that, but you can't let that like permeate and dictate off the stage. You can't have this thick skin, not let anybody in, not let So when the daughter is doing the double takes and stuff, you could see at the early part wherever he's like needs work, all he's thinking about is career. Like, yeah, I wouldn't put you on my show. That's terrible. Instead of like encouraging his daughter as a father. And you gotta as a comedian, you have to have this thick skin, but you also have to stay gooey on the inside. So when you're off the stage, the gooey part is what like drives your life.
Yeah, man, I love that idea of you. Even going back to that idea, like in this world you will have trouble. Jesus' words, not mine. We are going to experience trials, tribulations, suffering, all the things, because we live in a fallen world. We live in a world at war, and you do need that thick skin to go through it.
Yeah.
But you can't take that thick skin to the people who matter, to the people who look to you, to your wife, to your kids, to your close friends. You've got to be, as you said, gooey on the inside.
Yeah, and there's a great scene. So like most of his jokes early on was about his family and specifically about his mom. And then when his mom dies and they're at the funeral and they say, if anybody wants to get up and talk, and at first Buddy wants Stan to do it. And then Stan, everybody's pretty much like, no, Buddy, this is your thing. And he gets up and he's, of course, opens with some jokes about his mom. When I first heard that she died, my first thought was, did we get a recipe for kibble? And he gets a laugh. And then he kind of, he does his Buddy Young Jr. thing. But then all of a sudden you see that thick skin just taken off and set aside. And he's like, he was talking about how she has these big arms, these curtains, flaps and stuff. And he's like, but when you were in her arms, there was never a greater place to be. And then you just see him taking that thick shell off.
What can you say about someone who gave you life? My brother Stan first told me that our mother had passed away. My first thought was, did you get her recipe for kugel? The woman lived in the kitchen. Seriously, she had a bed put in there and everything, and until I was 15, I thought my name was Taste This. To blow my nose and gravy would come out. Yeah. She was everything for us. She cooked for us. She cleaned for us. She had sex with our father. I'm sure that was no picnic. Remember the arms on her? She had these gigantic arms that they weighed more than me and you, Stan. They did. They were like flesh curtains, these arms. Just looked like the Jewish Batman, just this big cape. When she waved goodbye, sounded like 5 people applauding. When we were kids, we could sneak into the movie theater, hiding behind those arms. The Lowe's Pitkin in Brooklyn. Am I right, Stan? Remember? But when she held you in those arms, it was the safest place in the world to be. I loved making her laugh. Because she had this laugh. Big beauty laugh. You know? It would hit you like a wave at Coney Island. I've done a lot of things in my life that, you know, but I know that I made my mother laugh. She was 91, and she went too soon.
One of the greatest things in life, and I even think about this now as my parents are getting older. And Buddy says this. He goes, of all the things I've done, you know, one thing I can proudly say is I made my mother laugh. Like I made her laugh. And I have that relationship with my mom. One of my favorite things to do is make my mom laugh. Even, to this day, just hearing my mom laugh at something I say is better than, a 3,000 seat theater laughing, at my booger jokes or, whatever. Like it's like hearing my mom laugh at my booger jokes. Like that's where it's at. That's the big thing. And you see that kind of softness all of a sudden start emerging. And you also kind of see him, if you really have a trained comic eye, you can see him kind of wrestling with, oh, I shouldn't be this vulnerable. But as he starts to do it, he's like, no, this is comfortable. This is good. And you just see him soften a little bit. But then he's right back to one of the things that made me laugh the hardest was then fast forward later in the movie, Buddy runs in to Stan, and he's like, Stan. And his brother's like, what is it? And he goes, Mom died again. And like, that sums up everything. Like he had something so important, so like he had to share with his brother, but he also thought of a joke. So he's got to throw that out. And that's the way my dad and I, have always like lived our life is like, we can be serious when we need to be, but also you're going to get a couple little jokes like in it.
Probably not going to last very long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting as you were talking about that moment about how he made his mom laugh, and that was one of the great moments. Seeing, as you said, he starts with his stage presence, but again, he becomes younger the more he talks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And last summer, I was fishing, and my wife and I we went for a couple of days out to a lake in Tennessee, and I rented a pontoon boat. And every morning, sunrise, I was out fishing. And this is supposed to be one of the best fishing lakes in the state. It's all perfect weather, and I see fish jumping all around me, and I'm catching nothing.
Yeah,
and I'm praying. I'm talking to God. I was like, God, I really want to fish. Sort of like it'd be really nice if it snowed. Let me pray for snow. Let me pray for fish. I really want it. But what God was doing was he was sort of taking me deeper into that. And it was reminding me of my grandmother, my dad's mom, who, she was she delighted in us. She would always laugh and always smile. And they had a cabin up in Maine, and we would go out early in the morning. Like we would catch pickerel, and she would come back and fry it for breakfast.
Oh, it's the best.
And like thinking about that, I was like, why is it so important to catch fish? And it was like, when I catch a fish, I hear my grandmother's laughter. Like I feel her delight. And to a point, God was like, that's become too important. That's become the focus, not enjoying the time together and enjoying outside and all this stuff. But like realizing how important that was, like her smile, her laugh, her delight not in anything I do, but just in being with us.
Mm-hmm.
Like Buddy said, is like, I love to make her laugh.
Yeah.
And there's something to that. And I think that we can receive that from God too, it's like you're talking, there's this sense that almost like laughter is the language of heaven, Because if there's joy, if there's love, if there's all this good stuff, like God created laughter, right?
Yeah. And it's free. Like
Yeah.
I do this bit on stage, but it is true. I read in a medical journal that laughter was 10 times more powerful than morphine. Like that quick burst of endorphins and laughter is actually more powerful than morphine. So the joke I do on stage is because everybody looks at me like, really, like they think I'm making it up, but I'm actually not making it up. And so I say, okay, a couple of you agree, the rest of you are staring at me like, we like morphine. And I go, it's not either or. You know, if I break my leg in half, I don't want my doctor standing over me going, knock, knock, you know, like, so that's the joke. But the reality is I wrote that bit because I wanted to remind people that God did create laughter and it is powerful. It's healing. Man, there's so many people that come to my shows that just haven't laughed in a long time and they kind of forgot the healing power of laughter. And they can come and, like I say, you know, set their burdens down for an hour and just be reminded there's joy to be had in the world. And I mean, that's a powerful thing that God created is laughter. And so, yeah, I think that's why that resonated with me, that funeral speech, because yeah, ultimately I've been doing this 27 years. I've made quite a few people laugh. Not anybody at my show last weekend, but most of the time, like I've made people laugh. And but the greatest achievement is I've made my family laugh. You know, I've made my boys like my living room's right off my office here. That living room, even in the midst of all the darkness and us trying to figure out life as a single dad and all that, we filled that room with laughter. Like that laughter is, I mean, that room is full of past laughs. And to me, that's my greatest achievement. You know, it is a powerful tool that God has given us. I don't know if that was a question or anything. We kind of just went off.
I call it following the Spirit.
I've actually done really well. I know Matt probably warned you, but I've actually stayed on topic pretty well today. I think a flu has kind of you're getting Bob Smiley decaf instead of
nice.
the full, yeah.
Not the full bore.
Yeah.
No, Matt was like, yeah, just to warn you, he's a talker. And I'm like, holy crap. If Matt Gleaves is calling someone a talker.
Yeah.
Whoo!
Hello, kettle. You're black.
Right. No, this is, man, this has been delightful and
I love
super
Matt.
enjoyable.
I want to say that on here. I love Matt. I could listen to him for, I couldn't listen I have to listen to him for hours because he just
it's hard to get a word in edgewise with him.
Yeah, because you don't want to interrupt, but there's no, that's the only way.
Yeah, being a part of if we sat down together over a cup of coffee or something, yeah, I would just be laughing because there's nothing else I could. It wouldn't be like I'd be contributing to the conversation. It'd just be two bucks fighting over the best grazing ground.
Yeah, that's true.
So Bob, thank you so much for coming on here. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome and a blast. And I have had, my daily dose of laughs just in this conversation. So I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about you, your shows, the stuff you're working on, what's the best place that they can go find that stuff?
So I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on X. If your listeners are sinners, I am on TikTok. It's just Bob Smiley Comedy is the handle for all the social medias. My website, and I believe, Paul, is your homepage, is bobsmiley.com. And that's where you can find all my show dates.
Where I always go. First thing I do. Check out every morning.
I want to thank you for doing a podcast about movies. That was one of the things that my kids and I, especially when I was a single dad, I would make dinner, and then and some people might not think this was the best thing to do, because I know the dinner table is a good, important deal. But I would make dinner, and then we would watch part of a movie. So throughout the week, we would watch 2 or 3 movies in completion, and I would show them all these comedy movies that I grew up on. We would watch a lot of current, movies that had come out that, that my kids liked. They wanted to show me. And movies were a really good kind of healing solve on, the wounds that we were. So, to the point where when I got married to Sarah and she brought me two bonus kids. So Dylan and Mason are my two bonus kids. And they, moved in. I didn't realize that my boys and I talk in movie quotes to the point where we were sitting around the dinner table one night and we were referencing, and we had this box. I wanted your listeners to know this, but we had this box called Clear Play that would edit out all the bad stuff of movies. So I could show my kids Blazing Saddles, Airplane, Top Secret, all these movies that
Blazing Saddles must have been like a 5-minute movie.
It was like, so when I got this DVD player called Clear Play. It doesn't even exist anymore because Hollywood sued them because you can't edit movies without their approval and all this. But you would set it if you didn't want alcohol use or bad words or anything. So I got the DVD box, set it up in the living room, kind of forgot about it. But then what was the movie? It was Jack Nicholson, Leonardo DiCaprio. It was a cop movie.
The Departed?
The Departed. I got the Departed had just come out on Redbox. And so I got it. And so I put the kids to bed, put the Departed in, and it started out, I think, with Jack Nicholson. And he goes, the thing about the Dagos is, and it was just as long. And I was like, oh, this probably isn't a movie I need to watch. If it mutes that long, I was like, okay, that's probably not, But yeah, I would use that DVD player. And so we were sitting around the kitchen table, and as we were eating, we're just throwing out lines that all go with what we're talking about, but from 30 different movies. And finally, Sarah was like, I know you guys are speaking English, but it's so foreign. It doesn't make sense. Can we just talk normal? And we kind of realized we do have our own little movie language and stuff. But yeah, movies they've been a great thing. Whenever you're feeling depressed, whenever you just want to escape, if you can't go to my show, then sometimes movies are just the best to just kind of turn your brain off and just sit with your kids and laugh and, think. And yeah, so I love what you're doing with this podcast.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Now, did I read that the way you sent it? Because I didn't want to scroll.
You did it perfect.
I tried to remember how it ended. Okay, good. All right. I felt like I nailed it.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk to people and you start just asking them. My wife will say, "What's your favorite movie?" I was like, "You can't ask that question. You'll get stuck. What's one of your favorite movies?" And then you say, "Why? What do you love about it? What character?" Yeah. And you get to know someone super deep, super quick. It's like, and you ambush them because all of a sudden they're talking about, as you mentioned earlier, one of our first questions is, "What's your job?" It's like, instead, what's your favorite movie? What's one of your favorite movies? And then you get to know somebody a lot more than finding out they're a pipe fitter or, they're an accountant or whatever it is they do. It's like, oh, well, this is your favorite movie. This tells me so much about you.
Yeah.
That you don't even know.
So when I was single, that was one of my go-to questions whenever I, be on a first date. But I would ask, give me your top 5 favorite movies, because I found that in 5 movies, I could kind of tell who I was out with, so if it's Halloween 1, 2, 6 and 7, I was like, okay, check, please.
You're sneaking out the bathroom window.
Yeah. I'm like, didn't you have a steak knife? I don't see it at the table right here. Can I,
we're going to date in public places.
Yeah. Let me introduce you to my cousin who's a cop. If I found that if you get somebody to list their top 5 favorite movies, or just 5 movies that they like their go-to to watch, it really does tell you a lot about who that person is. And it's kind of an interesting case study on psychology of humans.
Yeah. So, yeah, once again, I really appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation. It was incredible. For all the stuff, the growth, the audience, all the things I'm trying to do. What I found is the treasure is actually in the relationships and the conversations that I've got to have as a result of doing the podcast and going where God's leading me. And, when somebody says something like you just said, encouraging me, that's just God saying, yeah, you're on the right path. Keep going. And
yeah,
so
it's
thank
funny.
you for
My
that.
wife was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? And I was like, yeah, we're going to talk about Mr. Saturday Night. And she was like, how much time do you think you're actually going to talk about the movie? And I was like, I'm going to really try. I'm going to really try this time. Like, stay on topic.
Yeah, then we'll see. Now you're talking about Star Wars. Stay on target. Stay
on. Yeah, it's a trap.
So before we start another hour-long conversation, we'll wrap this up. This has been Paul McDonald and Bob Smiley, sort of talking about Mr. Saturday Night. Yeah. Hope you guys laughed as much as we did, and if not, then what's wrong with you? But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast. I'd like to invite you to visit our sponsor, Confined Space Coffee, at confinedSpaceCoffee.com. They use coffee as a way to wake us up to the realities of the confined spaces we live in, whether at the workplace or in our hearts, minds, and souls. Men at the Movies listeners can get 10% off their first order by using code MATM at checkout. Visit confinedSpaceCoffee.com and elevate your work.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?